Hey there. So, for the tens, if not hundreds, of Studio HFL fans, I'd like to say hello, welcome back. I would like to let you know that I've got some more interviews finally coming out. In 2017, I started these interviews. First 50 or so were audio only. And then, of course, thanks to COVID and Zoom, I was able to get video for most of the rest of these interviews. And then life went back to somewhat normal and I stopped editing, and it's been bugging me for some time. So finally, the pendulum has swung the other direction, and here I am finally editing and getting these interviews out. Now, early on, I had sponsors, and I was ever so grateful to have those sponsors. I wouldn't have been able to have quite the success for the podcast that I did without them. Of course, that includes, in no particular order, Eastman Music Company and S.E. Shires, Chop Saver, thank you, Dan Gosling, Austin Custom Brass, Hammond Design, Pickett, Blackburn, and Messina Covers. And I think I'm leaving somebody else out of there. I think that's it. Anyways, and also to some Patreon subscribers. Couldn't have done it without you guys either. So thank you ever so much. Oh, yeah. If during the interview you are so moved to like and subscribe, then please do. Don't worry, this is my only ask. You won't see or hear about that again. So, now without further ado, on with the interview.
Hello. How are you?
I'm good. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Larry, and thanks for doing this.
Yeah, Dane was, he was kind of one of the first really outside the box interviews I had done. I don't know if you've looked up my website or, seen who I've talked to, but, it'd been really brass players.
Right. I enjoyed, actually. I got an email this morning and watched a little bit of This Morning's with the teacher who was talking about the student who she didn't like that came back, and that was great.
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, thank you. And, I'd checked your stuff out. Of course, these days when I get a recommendation, it's like, I can trust it pretty well. It's not like, the guy down the street saying, you need to talk to my cousin.
Right. We've all been there.
Yeah. So, I had to disappear for a second. I had a green shirt on a minute ago. And when I turned on my Zoom background,
Right.
disappeared. So, well, how are you?
I'm doing great. It's an absolutely beautiful day, and I'm in Nashville in my Nashville studio this week. I don't know where you're based, Larry.
Indianapolis. We're not that far apart.
No, and I'm assuming we're having similarly lucky weather.
It's beautiful outside. It's only 50 degrees up here right now, though.
Yep.
So a bit chilly. I didn't even think, of course, it's, the stereotype is if you're a songwriter, either you're in Nashville or LA, right?
Yeah.
I mean, or something. Yeah, I've interviewed several really high profile studio players. I mean, I don't know if you would know any of the trumpet players down there in Nashville, but
Mike Haynes is one of the ones I use. I'm trying to think.
Steve Patrick or Vinny Shashelski. I mean, there are a couple
I know
others.
Vinny. Sure.
Yeah. Great guy.
Yeah.
Great guy. And yeah, so I say we're close together. It's maybe 4.5 hours.
Right.
I used to work with a bunch of Brits on a cruise ship. And when I would tell them, I'm only 3 hours from Chicago, they're like, we can get to Scotland in 3 days.
Exactly. It's a matter of...
Exactly. So I tell you, this is kind of a treat because last Saturday I got to interview Bruce Broughton, an Oscar nominated and an Emmy Award-winning film score,
right,
music writer. And now here I am, with Grammy, and not just Grammy nominated, but Grammy Award-winning, right?
Well, so I contributed to an album that won the Grammy this year. I wrote a song with the artist Keb Mo, and the album won the Grammy. So officially it's Grammy recognized.
Well, I mean, come on, that's no small potatoes, right? Big deal.
It's, for me, it felt like my gold watch for 30 years at the company.
Well, hopefully no pink slip to go along with that.
No, thank goodness, no.
Right. I don't even know if pink slip is the thing anymore. I guess that
sounds right.
So, well, why don't we start there? I mean, since that was kind of a recent thing, tell a little bit about how that came about and the nomination and voting process and all that.
Great. I'd be happy to. And are we recording? We're all going and
Yeah, man, is that okay? We're
okay. It's great. Absolutely. So sure, I'd be happy to talk to you about that because like anything in a career in the arts, as I'm sure you know, there's no such thing as a straight line. So it wasn't like I thought, well, today I'm going to get up and write a song that gets on a Grammy-winning record. I was introduced to Keb Mo, the blues artist, who I had been a fan of for 20 years. We were introduced by my music publisher, who was courting Keb Mo at the time to do his publishing as well, and had made the pitch, would you be interested in writing with any of the artists on our roster? And he was game. So January 2015, I show up at Keb Mo's house, and Keb Mo's real name is, of course, Kevin Moore. Keb Mo is the abbreviation and his stage name. I show up at his house and get to meet one of my blues heroes, which is a total thrill. And we sit down, we chat a little bit, and the way that I think about this, and the way it has felt like this for me always, is if you learn anything in a career in the arts, it's that you don't put off enjoying the moment for something you hope might happen. So as far as I was concerned, I get to sit in a room with somebody who is a hero of mine in the blues world. I'm already to the good. Before anything else happens, we're good here. But we ended up sitting down, and over the course of about 3 hours, we wrote a song and went great. I thoroughly enjoyed the process. He's a joy to work with, as you might expect. And at the end of that period, I thought, well, this is wonderful. Now, Keb Mo and I are going steady. We're going to become best friends. We'll see each other all the time. We'll do a lot of writing. The short version of this story is I didn't hear from him again until I'm trying to think of how this happened. Okay, I got an email in 2019 from his manager saying, we need your publishing information. So I wrote back. Meanwhile, there has been another album released in the interim. Our co-write wasn't on it. It was a great experience. I was happy for the experience and for having written a song with one of my heroes. But I write the management back and I said, listen, normally when you ask for publishing, it's because Kevin would be thinking about putting this song on an album. Is that right? And they said, well, yes, we'll keep you posted. Which of course they don't. And I am looking in Rolling Stone magazine in July of last year, so 2019. It announces the record. It announces the tracks on the record. Sure enough, songs on the record. Amazing. And again, that would have been great. I now have what we call in the business a Keb Mo cut. I mean, that's a thing. Great. I send him an email just to say thanks. Don't really hear anything. November last year, the Grammy nominations come out. There it is. The album is nominated for a Grammy. Again, this is way above and beyond anything I could have ever hoped for. And then my wife and I, this January, this 2020 that everybody says has been such a terrible year, and in so many ways, please don't misunderstand, it's been awful. But there we are, 2020, sitting in the audience at the Grammys, and they announced that the album wins the Grammy. Just surreal. Absolutely surreal. This thing that happened 5 years previously, really that same month, 5 years ago, turns into a Grammy win. Just beyond belief.
What was that feeling like when, the announcement is made and the winner is, or the Grammy goes to?
So there is a part of you that basically says, don't place any weight on the outcome. And yet it felt like the culmination of 3 decades of getting up every day and doing the work and being given what effectively felt like a gift. It was incredible. And it, to the inside world, the arts community, my songwriting peers, they know who I am as a songwriter. That none of that changed. But to the outside world, I'd be lying if I said it didn't make a difference. It makes a difference. So in that way, I'm incredibly grateful. Um, and still, you get up and you do the work. So
It's interesting because as an artist, I'm a trumpet player. Um, as an artist, having, a Grammy or an Oscar or an Emmy or whatever, words like that are it's like a football player trying to make the NFL. The odds are so stacked against you
right.
for doing that. And you think, okay, the chance of reaching that award is one thing. We don't get that kind of acknowledgement or um, reward other than, people applaud at the end of our song or our concert or whatever. It's all this work, and you're talking about 3 decades of work, but this can't be the only acknowledgement that you've ever received. I mean, because you wouldn't have gotten that 2015 opportunity had you not already been noteworthy. And I know that's a horrible pun. I really didn't mean to say that.
I like it.
Had you not, yeah, but had you not already been at a really high level and recognized by peers, and I mean, Keb Mo, I mean, would that have not happened if you were the guy that just wrote, you were about roses are red, violets are blue, kind of rhyming?
Right. I want to believe, and here's how I look at it when I really stop to think about what enabled me to have this happen. And I think it was that at that point, 25 years of songwriting gave me the confidence to know that I could walk into the room with anyone and do my craft. I think that more than anything is what sort of gave me the satisfaction of knowing, yeah, this is what 25, 30 years worth of work results in. It results in your confidence and ability to go into a room with anybody, no matter who they are, no matter whether you've been a fan for decades or not, and know that you can do the thing that you've been training yourself to do. And so the award itself is wonderful, and it's really, I think, not necessarily a reflection on the song or the album as much as it is a reflection on the developing of the craft. That's sort of how I.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
That is a big deal. And okay, so you're saying 25 years of hard work. So I'm looking at you and I'm thinking, did you start when you were 5?
You know the trick about shaving your head? You can't see the gray hair. So
Right.
I actually moved to Nashville when I was 23, 24, and had been writing songs for about 5 years by the time I moved to Nashville. So for me, really, my official baptism into the music world came when I moved to Nashville in the early 90s. Because up until then, I was living in towns that weren't music towns, and I was in the phase of my career that I like to refer to as playing brown-eyed girl for drunk people. So doing a lot of bars, writing my own stuff, but not really examining the process, just writing when inspiration hit, which is a lovely reason to write, but not a way to make a career. So it wasn't until the early 90s when I moved to Nashville and said, okay, all right, I'm going to take this seriously now. And that's when, of course, your confidence gets crushed, because for the first time you start to realize, okay, here's where I am. And now I've seen where I need to be. And there's a big gap there. And so, I think a large part of having a career in music is accepting that you have to grow and not letting it overwhelm you, and staying with it. And I don't have to tell you, to build a career in the arts is mostly about not quitting, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, it's those failures or stumbles that give us traction to keep moving forward, right? I mean,
That's exactly
okay. So, as a trumpet player, I can measure myself against other trumpet players. I know where I fit, but I'm thinking, okay, you say as a songwriter, you realized you weren't quite where you needed to be. How do you, with that perspective, in that part of the industry, how do you see that? How do you say, oh my gosh, I need to be here when I'm only here?
Right. And it's an interesting question because songwriting on some level is, well, on most levels is incredibly subjective, right? So you can hear a song and think, I don't really like that. And yet that song could have sold millions of copies and been a hit that other people love. So on one level, you can't really say what good or bad is, but I knew with the kinds of songs that I was writing and my peers who were writing similar songs, or the people who had been in Nashville for a couple of decades who were writing in the same genre, the same style that I was, and I saw what they were doing. And I was starting to understand the elegance of their simplicity. And I was early on, like most songwriters, I thought every single thought that was in my head had to end up in the song. And I didn't understand how to simplify. And if I were going to simplify, how to keep the juice, so to speak. And so I saw these masters doing these things, these songs that seemed to be like there was nothing to them, and yet they were incredibly moving, and they said everything they needed to say. And I looked at my stuff and I thought, oh, yeah, I can't do that. I haven't done that yet. And so it was not only understanding where I needed to go, but slowly, very slowly. I'm making it sound like it was a very logical process. It wasn't. I was all over the place. And as a friend of mine said years ago, and I loved this, every once in a while I would screw up and write a good song. I just didn't know what I was doing. So it was understanding the craft and understanding how to get from where I considered myself to where I wanted to be. And that was just years and years and years of writing and writing and writing, a lot of collaborating and writing with people who were better than I was to teach me songwriting tricks and ways to approach songwriting that I hadn't thought of. All of that stuff, there's really no substitute for just doing.
So I'm thinking there are two parts, and I know but I'm going to divide it into two parts. You've got the lyrics,
Yeah.
you've got the tune, right?
Right.
The
Melody.
music, the melody and harmony side, and the groove, right? I mean, you can
Right.
break that down into the style and all that.
Right.
What was apparent to you that needed the most tweaking first? Was it the lyric side or the other side?
That's a great question. And when I moved to Nashville, I had been writing by myself exclusively. And that on one level is great. It's important to be able to do that. But on another level, there's sort of a sense that you don't know what you don't know. So it wasn't until I started writing with really exceptional melody writers that I began to understand that my melodies were a lot like my singing. Fine. They were fine. I sing fine. And my melodies were okay. But when I started to write with great melody writers, it occurred to me, oh, that's what that sounds like. And when you do that, ironically, and this is why I say it wasn't that clear to me at the beginning, I just thought my lyrics were getting better because they sounded better. You hang your lyric on a good melody, and all of a sudden you can say kind of anything and have it sound good. So as I started to learn where I was weaker, I started to pair myself with people who were stronger there. And it also forced me to up my game in the area where I thought I was, and found myself to be more a natural, which in my instance is more lyric based. So I started to learn, okay, if lyrics are your thing, then keep working on those, develop those certainly, but pair yourself with great melody writers. And all of a sudden, both of you end up with something better than either one of you could have done on your own. And the way this translates going forward is I have built a career around writing with artists for their records. Most artists are great singers. It's just sort of the nature of the beast. And if you are a great singer and you are a songwriter, you're generally writing for your voice. And if your voice is good, you're more ambitious melodically. Kind of works. And then because a lot of artists don't spend the bulk of their day writing, they spend the bulk of their day doing lots of things, and they want to be able to articulate something they're feeling. Working with a lyricist who can help them translate what they're feeling into a working lyric, it's just kind of a nice natural match. So I have built a career around writing with artists for their records and leaning more towards the lyrical side than the melodic side. I can write a melody. I can do it. And every once in a while, like I said, I'll screw up and write a good one. But for the most part, I have found my strength is in lyric writing and pairing myself with great melody writers. Now, to your point about harmonic arrangements and groove, strictly speaking, those are the work of arrangers and producers and less sort of the fundamental building blocks of songwriting. Now, it helps. Having a great groove and great chords help. But the example I always use on my beginning songwriting students is, I'm going to sing you a song now without a groove or a melody. Tell me if you recognize it. Happy birthday to you. Got it yet, or do you need the chords? So that being said, great arrangements, great production, critical to getting a song out in the world. But the building blocks of a song are the melody and the lyric.
I grew up, well, and I'm still not sure if I'm growing up. I'm thinking about, I grew up in a small church singing traditional hymns and, regular phrases. You've got a nice, strong cadence at the end. Okay, so you know where I'm headed. The evolution of melody writing has now come to where you have irregular phrases and where things fall on weak beats, or you put a phrase between syllables inside a word. And I'll be honest, I'm still having a hard time, and especially in church music, right? Because we have a contemporary praise and worship band, and I see it in Christian music, Christian contemporary music like that all the time. And I don't listen to a whole lot of pop, but I'm imagining it's there as well. Have you seen that evolution, and how have you accommodated for that?
Well, to your exact point about stressing unstressed, we call that putting the emphasis on the wrong syllable in songwriting.
Bingo. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And it's weird. And so I look at what you're referring to as sort of the very natural, instinctive, hymn-based structures and melodies and phrases. That is, to me, still, for the most part, kind of the safest, best bet for commercial songwriting. And what I talk to other songwriters about who are learning the craft is, break any rule you want, but know that you're doing it and know that you're going to be bringing attention to that moment in the song. So, thanks to TikTok, there is a big, fat reemergence of the old Fleetwood Mac song, Dreams. Just kind of came back around again. I'm sure they're delighted. But I use that song as an example because Stevie Nicks in that song sings, you ready? When the rain washes you clean. Washes? Really? Now, it worked out. Worked out fine for them. So break the rules. That's okay. Break the rules. But know that you're breaking them and do it on purpose. And I've got no problem with that. I also am very kind of open-minded about songwriting because I know that there are certain styles of songs that I gravitate towards and others that I just don't. And I tend to refrain from describing songs as good or bad. I'm going to take there's a great music producer named Don Was, who's worked with everyone from Bonnie Raitt to the Rolling Stones. He doesn't describe songs as good or bad. He describes them as generous and selfish, which I think is a much better description.
Interesting.
Generous songs, well, let me start the other way. Selfish songs are, hey, look at me, look at what I can do, look how good I am, musically, lyrically, whatever. And generous songs are written for other people to enjoy and connect with. I like that. Like, I can get behind that. Good and bad is so subjective. Like, do I like the song Achy Breaky Heart? No. Do I wish I'd written it? Yeah. That'd be fine. So, good and bad, that's a hard one for me.
Okay. So now I will say I've grown to like Taylor Swift.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Or Billie Eilish, but we're talking now some really different approaches
Yeah.
to songwriting and so much repetition,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? I mean, that's one reason I'm a fan of Rush, right? Because first of all, so many irregular rhythms that,
Yeah.
odd
Yeah.
meters that they use in there, but you never know it. I mean, they made it just
Right.
flow beautifully, right? And the same thing
Exactly.
with the lyrics. So it can be done. But, of course, Neil Peart, rest his soul,
Yep.
um, was one of the strongest lyricists for that group, and
Yeah.
so poetic,
Yep.
right? If he were to repeat himself, he probably would have turned the pencil over and erased that and started again.
Right.
So I'm not knocking, Taylor Swift or Billie Eilish. I'm just thinking, when did sheer repetition become kind of a, a norm for this? And I know it's not just current. It's been around forever.
It has, and there's sort of, for lack of a better way to put it, there's repetition and there's repetition. So Cole Porter, 100 years ago, was writing a song where every fourth line said, "I get a kick out of you." Kind of repetitive, but works. So a healthy amount of repetition is great. And generally the way that I like to describe it is the reason you either love or hate a song has to do with the repetition, because repetition is how the average listener will learn a song and learn it quickly. That's the thing that gets people to remember and to sing along, especially because, again, as I tell my songwriting consultation clients, the only people who are going to listen carefully to your lyrics the first time they hear a song are your mother and me, because you have paid me. Nobody else is really listening to a lyric the first couple times they hear a song because they're doing a half a dozen other things. They're driving, they're doing their laundry. I don't know what. What they're listening to is they're listening to the melody and maybe that little bit of repetition that pokes through that reminds them, oh, if I had to find this song again somewhere, it would be, I get a kick at something, I get a kick. So there's a power in repetition if it's done at the expense of the full story. If it's done at the expense of finishing your thought, I've got no room for that. But if it's done to help you remember it and sing it, okay, I get that. I can see how that works.
Let's talk about the hook for a
Yeah.
second.
Sure.
It's a thing, right?
Oh, live and die by it. Absolutely.
Every great song has it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I know very little about it. I know how to spell it.
Yeah, that's good to start.
Tell me about it and how much it plays into how you write, both the melody and the lyrics.
Right. Because hooks can be lyrical and they can be melodic. So let's start with lyrical, since that's my general way into most songs. Nashville, especially, is a lyric-driven town. Great melodies here too, but it's lyric-driven because country is lyric-driven. They're story songs. And so I remember having a conversation years ago with some songwriter friends of mine. We were all sitting around and we were trying to impress each other with the funniest titles we had thought of that didn't have songs yet. And titles are generally also the hook. And so a collaborator of mine said, well, I have this hook that I've been kicking around for a while that I haven't done anything with yet. And the hook is, "You're lying through your tooth." And I thought, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. And so your reaction is the reaction of hopefully anybody who hears the song that we ended up writing called "You're Lying Through Your Tooth," which is a heartrending story about a guy who gets left and he's trying to come back and his significant other is saying, "Yeah, I don't believe you. You're lying through your tooth." So that's what a hook does.
That plays really well in Appalachia, I would
It
imagine.
would. It would. It was kind of the Jerry Springer of country songs. And interestingly, it ended up getting cut by an artist in Canada. So apparently there's international appeal. So the idea is that there's something lyrically that people will remember and either laugh at or feel moved by. And it's generally short and it generally does that thing where it makes you feel something. Musically, there can be any one of a number of approaches to the hook. So I guarantee that anybody in our general age group, when you play the beginning of the song Sweet Home Alabama on the acoustic guitar, or the electric guitar rather, instant.
Right? As
Right?
soon as you said that, that's the
Instant.
first thing that went through my head.
That's a hook. That just kind of gets immediately. Now, melodic hooks in a chorus, the one that immediately comes to mind that I'll reference from earlier is ba ba da ba ba ba. Everybody knows that melody. That hook will get you from the moment, even before that rather simple and, oh, do I wish I'd written it, lyric comes up, happy birthday to you. All you have to do is ba ba da ba ba ba, and it's not that many notes, but that rhythm, that phrasing, and those notes, unforgettable.
Mm-hmm.
That's a classic example of an unforgettable musical hook.
Let's back up a little bit. Let's go back to the early days of songwriting for you.
Right?
You say, sometimes it came through inspiration. Were there times when you said, okay, I'm going to sit down, right? Maybe there wasn't inspiration. I'm going to sit, well, and I guess it might even apply today, where you're like, okay, I have to write something.
Right.
What's the process that you do? You go through that.
And that was the evolution from writing because I couldn't help it, the way most songwriters begin. Like, I'm just moved, I have to write this song, all the planets have lined up and something is happening here, which is wonderful. And there's no shame if that's the only way you ever write in your life. That's still songwriting. But if I made a decision, I want to make a living at this. And if I want to make a living doing this, I have to be able to write every day. I can't just write when I feel like it. That's like saying, I'll go to work and punch the clock when I feel like it. Nobody does that. You can't do that. So you learn tricks, you learn ways of basically harnessing that inspiration. And one of the things that I remember doing early on was every morning, no matter what, I would get up and I would write down the title to a song in a notebook. So by the end of a couple of months, I had, tens and tens of song titles, so that, and then after years, forget about it. It was hundreds and hundreds. So that on a day when I had to sit down and write something, you flip through that book and something will grab you. Something that you wrote at some point will turn into something. So you just plant seeds. A lot of it is about planting seeds. And these days, I'm asked relatively often, well, do you get writer's block now? And the short answer is I don't, because I am a collaborator now. And I have a certain amount of faith that either, some of my collaborators who are artists will bring an idea to the session, or here's a fun example. I sat down with an artist once and she says to me, I'm a little bit tired of singing about love. I thought,
that's a great song title.
It was the first line of the song. Because people say things in the chorus. So all that to say, you learn early on to put up your antenna from the moment you sit down with a collaborator, because that's where the good stuff is. And, it's no coincidence that the song I wrote with Keb Mo was written in January and is called Cold Outside. That's how it works.
I remember the first time I was ever actually asked to write anything. It was a fanfare, brass fanfare.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a huge fan of Mahler, Gustav Mahler. And so I wrote in the style of Mahler's, fanfares that he uses in his symphonies. I didn't start from a point of originality. I started with, a frame of reference. And so now I'm, especially these days, it's like, how in the world do you come up with anything that's truly original? Because everything we do is informed by our experiences, right? So do you try to avoid that? Okay, I know I'm not going to be completely original, or I don't know if this question is making sense where I'm headed.
It makes perfect sense.
Okay, so what can you say to that?
Well, so this concept that there is nothing new under the sun is on some level true. It really is. That is the reality of our world. However, even when we try, and let's use your Mahler example, even if you tried to make basically a Mahler sounding fanfare, it is still filtered through the prism of your musical experience. And it's the same thing with songwriting. You know, you'll talk to songwriters and they say, well, this was my attempt to do a such and such, right? And you listen to it and you think, doesn't sound anything like so-and-so, not even close. And yet in their mind, they're thinking, well, I think I made a kind of a copy of one of my influences. So while there is nothing new under the sun, there is also no such thing as an exact copy unless it's an exact copy, and those issues end up in the courts.
Exactly.
But for the most part, I think the reality is that we, by filtering things through our own musical experience, it's just different enough. You know, the classic example I use is that I remember sitting down with a collaborator once, and he said to me, "So, are we going to write another song about love and people?" That's kind of every song that's ever been written. And so, given that that's the case, how do you write a song that feels unique? And the trick is just to speak from your own voice, from your own experience, which of course becomes easier the more you do it. Early on, it's really, really hard to speak from experience when you don't have a lot of experience and you don't have an artist's voice that's well developed yet. But in time, and after hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of songs, that becomes a part of your mode of expression.
Who'd you listen to when you were growing up?
So for me, sort of formative influences early on were Elton John and Billy Joel on piano, James Taylor for guitar. Then it was blues artists like Keb Mo, ironically. So a little bit of everything, but I also was a big metalhead when I was in my early teens. So AC/DC and Black Sabbath were big influences. I never ended up writing like them, but I sure loved listening to that music. I loved Rush. I loved Yes. And these days, and interestingly, especially as I began to take my songwriting seriously, I couldn't listen to stuff like James Taylor or Elton John anymore because I couldn't listen to it as a fan. I could only listen to it and pick it apart. So I started listening to the Great American Songbook, the Cole Porters, the Gershwins, and I did it so that I had something that I could just enjoy without any judgment. And then I looked up 10 years later and I had an opinion about that stuff, and I started writing in that style. And I love writing in that style now. That's the nature of being an artistic sponge, I guess, is that you start by trying to avoid the thing that you're working on so that you can just listen to it as a fan, but invariably it becomes incorporated into your artistic sensibilities. So now it's mostly either classical. I listen to a lot of Bach, actually, especially Glenn Gould's piano Bach.
My 13-year-old is studying piano. He's almost 2 years in, but he sits on YouTube and soaks it up. Long Glenn Gould, Valentina Lisitsa, I mean, he'll whatever piece he wants to work on. And so he's way ahead of where his teacher wants him to be. If she heard what he was working on, she'd say, slow down.
Right.
But he loves the complexity of Liszt and Chopin. Right. And, so anyways, I all that to say, I introduced him to Glenn Gould mainly because I want you to see what kind of posture, because he was, in his chair, kind of bent, hunched over the keyboard, but absolutely brilliant. You're right. The Bach, what's the Goldberg variations, right?
Absolutely.
Beautiful. Just
stunning.
But, yeah, so it sounds like you're describing your early influences. I think we're about the same age.
I'm 52.
Yeah, okay. So we grew up listening to the same stuff. But I grew up, I never heard the lyrics. I couldn't tell you the lyrics to anything. It was always the tune.
Sure.
That caught my ear. And, as a trumpet player, you don't get to sing. Well, okay, we're supposed to sing through our instrument, right?
Correct.
But I never really paid attention to the lyrics. Early on for you, was it the same thing where you heard the tune, or were you locked into the lyrics right
I
away?
was locked into the lyrics early, but I think that, on some level, we are fundamentally who we are. I didn't know I was going to grow up to become a lyricist, a songwriter, but I did know that I was moved by the lyrics of songs. And I think that's where it started for me. And people like Billy Joel in particular, who has, with a few exceptions, some really thoughtful, really deep lyrics. That was powerful for me. That was something that I really connected with. James Taylor the same way. Really confessional, really detail driven lyrics. And that stuff stuck with me. So for me, maybe that was a foreshadowing of where I was headed, but yeah, the lyrics were very powerful for me early on.
At what point did you begin to help others? You say you lead
Ah,
workshops, you've got students. I mean, was that just a by chance that the students happened?
No, that's a great question. I think the way I like to describe it, there were a couple of things that happened. Some of them were actual physical location, and others were sort of chronological. In 2005, I decided to move to New York City. Still wanted to write songs, still wanted to do everything, but my studio was in Nashville. And so I was trying to build a new clientele, and I had already begun to develop, and this is a conversation for another day, a way of remotely streaming recording sessions to songwriting clients who lived anywhere other than Nashville. So you write a song in Indiana, you want what Nashville has to offer, but you can't get off work, but you want to hear it while it's happening. I was doing that in my studio. So
Very cool.
in a way, I was looking for new clients, and I was looking for clients outside of Nashville. So I woke up realizing, you know what? I've been doing both studio work and songwriting for a long time now. I have an opinion. And so I started writing articles and I started teaching workshops as a way of generating clients for my studio. So it was partly chronological in the sense that I've been at it now for, you know, a dozen years full time. And also that I was in a new location and was trying to build up a business. And the teaching was just a natural outgrowth of both of those things. And then I found, on top of it all, that I genuinely enjoyed it. Because if I hadn't enjoyed it, and I would caution anybody who thinks teaching is something you should do just to make a little extra dough, I think you're doing yourself and your students a disservice. You better like it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The last thing we need are teachers who aren't invested.
Yeah, you do a lot more harm than good.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, okay. So, I noticed on your website that you do workshops for songwriting teams, but then you think back to, right. You look back to to the credits, however many years ago, one songwriter. And now it seems like there are 8 or 10 people that are the songwriters for something. And it's like, well, first of all, if you're going through Harry Fox to get any kind of uh, license, it takes forever now, right? Because you
Right.
got to get in touch with everybody. Uh, what's How in the world do you ever come up with a song when you got that many people involved in something?
So a couple of things here. This is another one of those nothing new under the sun. So George Gershwin didn't write Porgy and Bess by himself. There were lyricists. So there was co-writing 100 years ago. There are a lot of people who write by themselves. I don't think there's a right or a wrong way to write a song, but co-writing existed, a long time ago too. Now, the 10 writer phenomenon, that's kind of partly a business decision. Like when you look at a Beyonce record and you see that there are a lot of writers on the song, I don't think they're all in the same room. They didn't all pack their lunch that day, bring a notepad, and come to the studio together. That is, I don't. Beyonce hasn't called. I'm waiting. Hopefully she'll call today. But I think the way that works is it goes through multiple studios. It goes through multiple lyricists. It goes through multiple songwriting teams. Like those songs are big business. And it may be that if you're going to use one of my songs, my manager needs to be listed as a collaborator. Some of those names may or may not actually have been involved in the actual creation of the song. So it's complicated. I think it is an attempt, for lack of a better way to put it. And again, it's hard for me to place a judgment on this because, in the end, I don't want to be that guy that says there's only one way to do this. Like, whether that style of songwriting is for me or not, okay. But the way that I look at that is whatever road gets you to Rome, if that's the way this is going to happen for a while, okay. All right. Sounds complicated to me. I prefer for it to be one or two co-writers. I don't think I've ever written a song that has more than one or two writers on it. But if that's the way that Beyonce and her team, or, other sort of pop in the sort of current sense of that word, if that's how they choose to do it and you want in, like, you've got a choice, right? You can either say yes or no. You don't have to do it. But yeah, that I don't know that I would love that, but I sure would love to have a cut on a Beyonce record.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, even if they're 10, that pie is so big that your little slice is still going to be pretty significant, right?
10% of a billion streams. We're good.
We'll take it.
I'll take it.
So you said, when somebody uses your song, so let's say you write this tune, lyrics and the melody,
right?
And an artist says, I want to record that. Has it ever happened where they've altered one, or like maybe altered some of the lyrics, or changed the melody or changed the groove, and you're like, wait a second, no?
So my general rule, if an artist has decided to represent themselves with one of my songs, so the short answer is I've never had a wholesale reimagining of my melody or lyric. Couple of little things, some intentional, some maybe not. I never let that stuff bother me. I will give you one of my favorite examples, though. I wrote a song with an artist named Spencer Day. And Spencer had just signed to Concord Jazz, and they decided to release the song as a single. And we wrote the song as kind of a Peggy Lee sort of fever, dum, 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 that kind of a vibe, right? And by the time it came out, it sounded like something out of an Austin Powers movie. And it was jarring. It was shockingly different groove-wise. Melody and lyric were good. And the artist was my collaborator, so he's kind of allowed to do whatever he wants. And the song ended up going to #1 on the jazz charts. And if I had stepped in and said, no, I refuse to allow you to change the groove, I don't know what would have happened. Like, the way that he did it is in large part the reason that it ended up going to #1. So on some level, as a songwriter, your job is to write the song and then to be totally thrilled, because it's pretty rare, even for the most successful songwriters, it's pretty rare for someone to record one of your songs. Like, on a sheer percentage basis, even the most successful songwriters, you're looking at single-digit percentages, I think, of songs that they write that end up getting recorded by someone else. You just smile and say thank you.
So tell me about this #1 on the jazz charts. Who was the artist? What was the song?
Spencer Day, and the song is called Till You Come to Me, and it came out on his album called Vagabond, and the label was Concord Jazz. So Spencer Day, Till You Come to Me, if you want to look it up online.
And stylistically, what kind of jazz is it? Is it a ballad? Is it
It is
swing?
kind of a mid tempo. Like I said, it used to swing a little more than it was. This one's it's got pizzicato strings on it now. It's kind of like a 50 Quincy Jones kind of Austin Powers vibe. It's fun.
Mm-hmm.
I love it now.
I love it now. Yeah. Man, I've got so many questions that I can ask on this.
I love it. Talk about myself all day.
Well, but see, and that's the beauty of it, right? Is because you're so savvy with everything that's going on. Oh my gosh! So here I am trying to think, where to go next on this. Well, you know what? Tell me about what you're working on. Like, what's a project that you're developing?
So there are a couple of things. I'll start with musically, and then I'll talk about sort of an outgrowth from the music. Musically, I'm doing some nice collaboration with a songwriter named Jim Tomlinson, and Jim's wife, and he is her band leader, is a jazz artist named Stacey Kent. And Stacey is just a wonderful, got kind of a Blossom Dearie-esque sound. I love her voice. I love the records she makes. And he and I are working on some new songs for her next project. She did a record called I Know I Dream that was with a full symphony orchestra that was just gorgeous. And Jim and I, her husband and I, wrote the title track, which was called I Know I Dream. And that was just a total thrill. So working with Jim now on the next round of songs has been a joy. They're such lovely people to begin with. And then to put new songs in the world with her as the ultimate artist has been great. So that's musically. But over the last 5 years or so, I have also been working with business teams, people who have never written a song in their lives, and showing them how examining any idea through the lens of songwriting will help them understand that idea better, and the sort of meta benefit of developing all these skills, like by learning how to create metaphors, you're learning to think laterally about any concept, or by learning to write verses, you're learning to tell stories, and it helps your creativity. That kind of thing. I realized that all of that sits under the kind of heading of innovation. So learning to write songs will improve business teams' ability to innovate. And I love doing this work for a couple of reasons. One, you're working with people who have been kind of conditioned to thinking that they're not creative. Talk to any business person. Oh, I don't have a creative bone in my body. And I get to show them that being creative is about breaking the process down into manageable parts and then applying what you've learned. So at the end of all of these workshops, we end up with a song, and then I make these people sing it, and it scares the hell out of them, and they never forget it, which I love. So I can go back to these business teams 5 years after we've worked on a song and say, what was your song called? And they'll go, oh, my song was, because they'd never done anything like that before. So I love that work. And I just finished writing a book that I released last month called The Reason for the Rhymes. And it's all about how you use songs to improve your ability to innovate. So part of the reason that I am on a bit of a podcast tour right now is that I'm spreading the word about the reason for the rhymes.
And I noticed on your website, there's a nice little flip book sample.
Yes. Yeah.
Flip book, is that the right? Yeah, flip book.
Yeah, exactly. You can either do that, or you can download a PDF of the first couple chapters of the book at thereasonfortherhymes.com. Yeah.
Is it a sin to rhyme anymore?
That's a great question. I don't think so. I love rhyming because I think it is yet another way that you can show your listeners that this song is easy to remember. It's just another one of those subconscious ways that you're helping your listeners learn your song. And yet you look at a song like one of the Simon and Garfunkel songs, America, I think. Let us be lovers, we'll marry our fortunes together. I've got some real estate here in my bag. Together, bag. So some songs rhyme, some songs don't. I like rhyming because I think it helps people remember, but if you don't want to rhyme, just make it interesting, make it good.
Or you could do what Louis Armstrong did, right? And when you forget the lyrics, you invent scat singing, right? And you just, yeah.
Worked for him.
It did. And many others since. Well, man, this has been a treat. Again, there's just so much that I don't know about this side, but well, not before the interview, but now I know quite a bit more, and it's been great. I appreciate everything you shared with it.
It's been a pleasure, Larry, and they're great questions, and it's always fun for me to speak to someone who is genuinely curious, and I hope your listeners enjoy it too, because the questions were terrific.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. When I first started this, I created I don't even remember. It was maybe 10 questions I was going to, go down the list and ask. And then in the first interview, that went right out the window.
Great.
because I forgot. I just got engaged in conversation. And then, uh, I do very little research ahead of time because I don't want to have these preconceived, directions. I want to listen to what you say. And I'm going to edit all this out, by the way. But, I want to listen to what you're saying and maybe follow. Ooh, that sounds interesting.
Well, it comes across as sincere interest, which I believe that it is. I'm not saying that it's not. And you will get anybody. Once you show interest in someone and what they're doing, just put on your seatbelt.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Oh, and I learned that too. There were a couple of, I went to a trumpet conference last year, 2019. I mean, nothing happened this year.
Right.
And I had these two youngish, late 20s, early 30s trumpet players who were kind of coming up in the world. Very little experience. The hardest interviews I've ever had because I was interested, but they were giving me,
Yeah.
yes, no answers. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is, I'm sweating thinking, I'm glad this is not live,
Killing me here.
It was disastrous. But anyways, yeah. So, and I tell everybody, even people are like, why do you want to interview me? I'm like, man, everybody's got a story.
Yeah.
And all you have to do is, and some of them, once you get them started, man, you can't.
Right.
Right.
Well, but you're a natural. You have a genuinely natural curiosity that carries the speaker through. Like I could see you absorbing what I was saying and then thinking about where you wanted to go. And it's wonderful. It's great.
I really appreciate that, and you know what? I may ask you for a little testimonial along that line, if
be
that's
happy
okay.
to do. Of course.
And mainly, I'm trying to leverage my way into the Hollywood film composer.
Yeah.
I had Bruce Broughton, the guy that did Silverado and Tombstone and a whole bunch of other great, he was my first interview last week, but I'm trying to get, the Hans Zimmers and John Williams and who knows if that'll happen. But people like you, I think would give me some street cred.
I'd be happy to do it. Of course.
Yeah. And I'm going to send Dane a really big thank you for connecting us because this really was great.
Well, likewise, I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I too will thank Dane. It's amazing how this sort of blossoms, as you get to know more people in this space. It's great.
Yeah. So I will keep you posted. Not like you were talking earlier, the Keb Mo people. I'll keep you posted. I'll keep you posted on when this comes out. And, the great thing about editing this one is nobody got thrown under the bus.
Right.
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 And it was just great all the way through. So it's going to be one of my quickest edits.
That makes me happy. Well, I thoroughly enjoyed it, Larry. And yeah, just keep me posted. I'll look forward to hearing from you.
All right. Take care. Please stay healthy.
You do
the best. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.